Showcase. I'd like to introduce Alpha Sigma Phi. I'm going to introduce our reviewers today. So we have Kara Miller, who's the Associate Dean of Students for the Office of Fraternities, Sororities, and Independent Living at Cornell University. We have Kim Monteau de Freitas, the Assistant Director of Fraternity and Sorority Life at the University of Vermont. We have Ryan Fincham, the Whiteface Hall Director at SUNY Plattsburgh. And we also have Sawyer Cook, the Fraternity and Sorority Life Graduate Advisor at University of Vermont.
All right, thank you all for being here to hear our presentation. Our mission statement is to better the world through better men. And our 5 values are honor, purity, patriotism, charity, and silence. My name is Eric Pierkowski, and I am the president.
Hello everyone, my name is Rodney Amboise, and I'm the new member educator. I've been for 2.5 years.
My name is Zachary Benhaim. I have been a brother of Alpha Sig for 2 years, and I'm the sergeant at arms.
My name is McAnthony Timothy. I'm the scholarship as well as the athletic director, and I've been a brother for a season.
My name is Alejo Juan. I'm a new initiated brother.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is how we've improved over the past year. Areas that we've improved significantly are new member education. We've infused our creed and our values more cohesively through that process. Our officers have shown vast improvement as far as contribution and participation. We have implemented a phase of brotherhood development called Sigma Phase that has been able to bridge the gap between undergraduate and professional development. And we've also, perhaps most importantly, fought to fight the stigma of what it means to be in Greek life, but more specifically, what it means to be an Alpha Sig.
So when we talk about the stigmas associated with Greek life in general, we've all heard them before. Partying, drinking, sexual assault, just things that don't really conform to the values of Alpha Sigma Phi. So our goal as an organization is to just fight the stigma. One of our first rush events for the entire semester is actually called Fight the Stigma. What we do is try to ingrain in our potential new members the idea that what you see in movies isn't really what Greek life is about, especially to our organization. Some of the things that we've done to pursue this initiative is, last week we brought in a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Kalin, who talked about masculinity. And he started a conversation that many fraternity men on this campus may not have thought of before. What does it mean to be a man in today's society? In addition, last semester we brought in a gentleman by the name of Tim Massot, who was reshaping the talks about sexual assault. He was a man who was sexually assaulted, and by changing the way that we speak about things, we're trying to better our organization as a whole. In addition, we've recently partnered with Take Back the Night, an organization who's had a lot of difficulties with fraternities in the past. We're the first fraternity to be peacekeepers for Take Back the Night, and that's something that we're really excited to take part in next week.
What I thought about fraternities when I lived in Mexico and Argentina was Animal House and Party. And when I really got to meet the brothers, I saw a gentleman. Men that care about their growth, men that care about looking after each other. And honestly, that's all I ever looked for. I know I recognize I'm the future of this fraternity, and I plan to keep on fighting the stigma that's all around Greek life, because I know the gift that it's been to me, and I know and it has shaped the direction I want to go in. So I know that it could do the exact same thing for everybody else if we help them understand what this is really all about.
So there's a lot of changes we want to make throughout the organization since I first joined the organization. The one thing that always struck me was new member education. It was very non-interactive. I only met with my new member educator once a week, and it just continued on semester after semester, and we really wanted to change the way we did it. And the best way we could change our brothers is from the ground up, from the foundation, from the new member education process. So the first thing we want to do is ensure that these brothers understood what actions becoming an Alpha Sig were. And the way we did that was, it's a 5-week plan, minus spring break, And there's 5 parts of the creed. And all 5 parts of the creed teach you what it means to be an Alpha Sig. So week 1's theme say was to faithfully observe the ethics of Alpha Sigma Phi, assisting and encouraging my brothers. And in that week we discussed, the ethics of Alpha Sigma Phi, the values. We wanted them to interpret for themselves what these values mean to you. How can you embody these values? They all went around in a circle and they just spoke their minds and how do they think that they can embody these creeds? And not only that, they were put in positions where we'd ask them, if you can embody those creeds, if you can embody the creed in some way, bring it to the chapter, let them know. So not only the new members are learning something new, but the brothers themselves. And to see how interactive we were very hands-on, very interactive. We spent time with them, not just inside new member education and chapter, but we went to go visit them at their rooms and meet their friends. Their friends saw that what we were about, so their friends were more comfortable understanding what kind of brothers that we were as brothers of Alpha Sigma Phi. And seeing how they've bonded, we've never had this type of bond before, so it was just such a huge improvement. That when we finally got to see these brothers, see these members become newly initiated members, it really brought about a lot of emotion throughout us all, and it honestly makes us so proud to see one of us newly initiated brothers up here now speaking in the Chapter of Excellence Showcase. And I mean, if I'm speaking from personal experience, I've only cried twice throughout the initiation process. It was from my own and for the new guys.
During new member education, we had the opportunity of interpreting the creed of Alpha Sigma Phi and the 5 values. For example, to me, honor means standing your ground for what you believe in. And then we shared that with our pledge class, and they shared what those values meant to them. But not only that, but our new member educator, Rodney, encouraged us to interview each individual brother on what this fraternity has given to them, why they started, and what's their perspective on those values. So we got 36 different perspectives of how to embody those values into our daily lives. Another huge point of our new member education was creating our own perspective, not only of the fraternity and the brothers, but Greek life, and starting with a clean slate of what we think about other fraternities, not prejudging, and decide what we want to take and achieve in this fraternity. We also worked with the A5 pledge class on our gift to the fraternity, which I think was huge to create relationships and the principle of friendship. And my goals really changed massively during new member education. So I know that by following this program that Rodney built up, during the next semesters, we could really have an impact, a huge impact on the potential new members.
So, you're hearing about a lot of changes, a lot of improvements, and probably wondering where it started. Well, if you ask me, it started with our officers. It started with our leadership. As president, opposed to our last president now, I have made it my mission to attend everything that I possibly can. And what that comes down to is holding the rest of my brothers accountable to the same extent I hold myself accountable. I cannot better them if I'm not doing the best myself. So you look at positions like new member education, like Sergeant in Arms, which is our standards chair, like scholarship, and you really see a lot of strides in the direction that we want to take this organization.
And Eric mentioned accountability, which is a really abstract term, something that we strive for, but we really may not have a full grasp or understanding of its actual definition. So that's something that we've been working through with our standards chair, with the standards board in general. My goal as the standards chair was to create the most diverse committee possible so that they could recognize different walks of life, different people, and basically to make us more aware of the issues. In addition, there were some really hard decisions that my standards board had to make this semester. As we've been saying, sexual assault and inappropriateness towards women is something that we're really trying to fight against, and there's a zero tolerance policy in our organization. There has been quick and decisive action anytime anything like that has come about, and I think that just speaks volumes to the development of our organization in general.
When you join a Greek organization, you hear these 3 things: community service, philanthropy, and fundraising. And the most important reason we come to an institution of higher learning tends to often get overlooked, and that's school. At the end of the day, that's why we all come here. So when I came in as a brother, I saw that scholarship director was a position that a lot of brothers viewed as inferior, as a position holder who just came to chapter and said, guys, log your study hours. And after going to our leadership conference in St. Louis over winter break, I took it upon myself to change that narrative, to push the scholarship director to do more. So in a sense, although I do not hold the e-board position, I tirelessly work with e-board, and now we are incorporating a new bylaw that says that now brothers have to maintain a 2.8 semesterly GPA. We already have the highest GPA requirement for initiation at 2.7, but we feel that now incorporating the 2.8 as a semesterly GPA will help brothers hold each other accountable and only push brothers to strive better to do well in school. Also, as scholarship director, now we have a Tibetan Man Scholarship, which now rewards two brothers, one who has the highest cumulative GPA in the fraternity, as well as the brother that shows the most significant improvement in his GPA. We also added incentives with study hour competitions. We have a study hour competition with Alpha Epsilon Phi and Delta Phi Epsilon. And this is just an example of how just thinking outside the box and doing more and taking something like scholarship can help motivate brothers, and taking scholarship and combining it with incentives can build friendships with organizations that will last forever.
And as I mentioned in the beginning of our presentation, we've implemented something completely new for our chapter, and that is Sigma Phase. Sigma Phase are bi-weekly meetings where most of the sophomores and juniors get together to discuss topics like health and wellness, like service and philanthropy, like career development. And essentially what these meetings are reflecting upon the why. So just last week, we covered our service and philanthropy component, and it was time to reflect. And what Chris Burek, our vice president, asked us was, what impact did it have? Why did we do this? And I think that's something that is often overlooked. We have all these requirements to meet, we have all these service events, and we raise all this money, but when do we actually sit down and ask why? How often do we really reflect on the impact we've had on our community, on Greek life, and also ourselves? So with Sigma Phase, we've combined developing brothers as undergrads into professional adults, but we've also been able to look back on all of the good things we've done and really figure out what that means to us and what that means to those around us.
As an organization, we take a lot of pride in how selfless our brothers are. We have brothers who contribute to cancer research, diabetes research. We have Chris Burek with his Safe Haven initiative. We have the diversity committee chair. We have brothers who are on the e-board for Relay for Life. We have brothers who are on the e-board for Up Till Dawn. We have a brother in the SA Senate. We have a brother who was just named residential director. We have countless brothers who just continuously show how selfless we are and who go above and beyond, not because of the letters that they wear on their chest, but because these are just the men that we breed, and these are men who just time and time again show that we are about our motto, and that's to better the world through better men. And we went from an organization that had virtually no presence on campus to an organization that now has brothers involved in almost every single club and aspect of campus life.
So all in all, you heard us speak a lot about self-improvement. And it's because we try not to compare ourselves too much to other organizations. We don't necessarily pay attention to how much service hours or philanthropy money other organizations have raised or so on and so forth. What we really want to do is learn to improve ourselves. What we really want to do is help to improve every individual within this organization, because that in turn, helps them better themselves, in other areas of this campus. We discussed how many different corners of this campus that brothers are involved in, and outside this campus discussing, the research of cancer and diabetes. All that matters to us is that the only people we compare ourselves to are previous selves. We just want to get better. That's all that matters to us. Every time we set the bar high, we break it, and we want to aim it even higher to make sure we never get complacent, because that in turn shows us how we can build the world with better men.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're going to have reviewers ask questions.
Thanks for sharing a lot of your new initiatives and some of your future aspirations. What I'd like to hear a little bit more about is your engagement with your alums. What are you doing to maybe communicate some of these new things that are going on, or maybe your expectations of them when they come and visit you, or, because it sounds like you've really been transforming the collegiate experience, but I guess, how are you communicating that with them, and how are you still keeping engaged with your alums?
Speaking on a little bit. One thing that I really wanted, I joined this organization 2.5 years ago, and I've seen a lot of brothers graduate, and I still maintain strong relations with those gentlemen. And they've sometimes discussed, their concerns with like how we sometimes just pretend this and so. So as we remember educated, what I did was we have an alumni page with all the alumni, and I posted asking them, who would be free, who would like to have a conversation, with some of our new people, with some of our new potential new members. So you heard Alejo speak on how the potential members were encouraged to interview active brothers or current brothers right now. They were all given numbers of alumni from the 80s, 90s, thousands, and recent graduates to interview them about their whys, what reminds them of, why did they join this organization? What do these values mean to them? Because we have changed over the years dramatically, and hearing these different perspectives really helped in turn to, bring them closer. And, we have an alumni named Jeremy Matheson who called me, just thanking me so much for having the opportunity to speak, sit down and eat lunch with one of our potential members, Connor, who's actually in the back right now. I have one of my best friends who graduated, he's a year over me, who called me I don't want to talk, the way our conversations go, but he was just really, really, really thankful about how we got a chance to speak to these new members. And, he was really scared about losing touch with this organization, because when you graduate, it's a whole new ballgame. It's all about, your career. You're thinking about, starting a family possibly. And you look back and he got really nostalgic hearing him talk about how he went to new member ed and how he was in chapter, and sometimes people talk too much, and he was, explaining to the new guys, that, it's easy to complain about some of the stuff you deal with now, but you're gonna miss it when you come back. And whenever the alumni do come back, we call them a lot of advice. We actually call alumni who have won Chapter of Excellence prior to ask them for help, and that's another way we engage them in trying to help the organization now. We're planning events for spring. Normally we only have one. We usually only have one alumni event, homecoming, and what we're trying to do now is have find a central region where most alumni are. It's easy to find, and we're thinking possibly Saratoga, somewhere in the capital region. We're all going to meet together and have a huge barbecue, sort of like a family reunion type theme, where we just sit down, talk about how things were back in the day, talk about how things have changed, and kind of show those guys, what have we been doing recently to, make them feel proud about where they left the organization.
Thank you.
I can speak on that a little bit. Last semester, we actually had one of our much older alumni. I believe he graduated in the 70s or 80s, and he spoke to us a lot about his experience, and that was on a conference call, a Skype call with the entire chapter. He spoke about improving our relations, because I'm not gonna be unrealistic with you. Our alumni relations could be better, and there's always gaps between undergrads and graduates, but having things like conference calls, having things like integrating the new member class to the alumni, I think are really great strides in the right direction. And while perhaps we could have been doing more, a lot of our focus this semester has had to have been internal. And now with all these initiatives and all this progress, now is when we reach out to the alumni and we sort of reel them back in and sort of re-inspire, re-instill that love for the organization that we feel we're exemplifying now.
I'm really impressed. I thought it was a really professional presentation. You all look great. I see all these people here watching.
Thank you.
I think your commitment, it sounds like you're really redeveloping your organization. I think your commitment to sexual violence, prevention, education, conversations, participation is so needed, and I'm really glad you're stepping up in that area. Just great job.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
I have a question about the Sigma phase. So it was saying that it's a 2-year membership development program. You might have said it and I just might have missed it. Is this something that is given to everyone, or is this an opportunity to everyone? So is it assigned, like, is this something that once you join, you are automatically doing, or is this something that you kind of like ask?
This is something that is part of our national, I guess, framework, but hasn't been implemented before. Chris Burek, our vice president, like I said, is spearheading it, and he's made it pretty much open on a volunteer basis to sophomores and juniors. So, and really what we want are brothers who want to be there, who want this development, who want this sort of reflection and opportunity to look at what we're doing. So to answer your question, it's been encouraged and asked, but for the most part, it's been on a volunteer basis, and consider that it's actually been a pretty good turnout.
I actually think that it's better off to be on a volunteer basis, because then you get to really work with those people that want to work with it. So I didn't want you to feel like I was like cornering you until but no, that was just a wondering question. I guess I do have a follow-up. One of the parts of your what are these? Your mission statements is charity, and I just wanted to see if there was anything that, because I think you hit every other part of your mission statement. That was just the one part I didn't see so much about in this presentation, so I was just wondering if you could give me like a brief glimpse of your charity aspect of your organization.
Okay, so our 5 values are all connected to different types of charities, and one of the things that we really try to do is we really try to hit every single philanthropy, but it's hard to raise money for every single one. So what we've tried to do is try to work with other organizations as well to hit outside of our charities. So last semester what we did was we worked with Alpha Epsilon Phi, we did Sigs and Phis and Bows and Ties, which is an event where we raffled off friendly dates with members of our organization and their organization. And not only did we raise money for RAIN, the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network, we also raised money for their philanthropy, which was the Child Pediatric AIDS Foundation. And what we have coming up is we actually have a soccer tournament that we're raising money for. Which one? RAIN. We're raising money for RAIN again. And the last time we did it, we raised somewhere around $850, and we're really looking forward to raising money for that now. Recently, we also have a bike-a-thon coming up, which we do Homes for Our Troops, which ties in with patriotism being one of our philanthropies, and we can tell we really love America with the flag in the background. But yeah, it's really about building that foundation for showing people we care about the troops who give their lives every day overseas and so on and so forth. So those are some future ideas we have for this semester coming up. We haven't really got to build it yet. We're waiting for warmer weather and so on and so forth. And those are our ideas for charity this far.
We also did a sort of on-the-spot philanthropy event earlier in the semester on Valentine's Day, and in that we sold flowers, and we raised money for a organization called Honor Flight, and we raised about $270. So that's just another example of how we've sort of given back.
Cool, thank you.
I have a question in regards to I know that you were saying that your alumni support could use improvement, or you're working to reintegrate that support system with your organization. So I guess I'm just curious to know in what areas where you may have feel like you've been lacking that support, where have you supplemented that? Have you been working more to gain that from the fraternity and sorority life office here, or are there other mentors that you've been working with?
Personally, I think, honestly, we all go through issues. We all have obstacles, that we need to overcome in time. We're college students, it's going to happen. So sometimes, to me, one of the main things I've learned as far as being a brother is you have to be able to look at the perspectives of other people. Because, everybody, more than likely, people that have been here before have been in the same situation as you have. So, you need to be able to not blame yourself for certain situations and kind of just, talk to other people and see, well, man, I'm going through this. When you went through this, so how do you feel about it? So what I did is I reached out to an alumni, Kyle Radziminski, who is a recent graduate, who was a former president. And I put towards him, some ideas, reached out to him, and, wanted his outlook on certain things. And, I feel like he really pushed me to he gave me some great advice, and that advice is, if you believe wholeheartedly that it will benefit your organization, you know, you're gonna have brothers that support you and keep on pushing to, you know, to do it. And I feel like that just reflects on, you know, me going to eBoard and working with my organization, you know, as far as our GPA requirement and, you know, getting scholarship. Because before this semester, next semester when it comes into effect, scholarship never had a budget. Scholarship was probably the only position that didn't have a budget. And now, now we have scholarships to give out. You know, so I feel like just reaching out to alumni for something as simple as advice. It doesn't have to necessarily, you know, mean, you know, just planning an event or, you know, just, you know, going through hard times. But sometimes alumni can help you, you know, just think outside the box. And, you know, when you have alumni, and that's one thing I like about our alumni. Our alumni are so willing to just give advice and give help. And some of our alumni have given me some of the greatest advice I could ask for. And I feel like when you have that, when you have an alumni that they don't even know you and they treat you like family just because of the letters that you have, I feel like that relationship just will ultimately just make your organization better.
I like to piggyback on that. Some of the potential new members actually discuss, like, you know, sometimes I wonder, I have this concern, and the alumni, you know, they don't necessarily quell it or throw it away. They kind of explain to them, like, you know, we've been there too. You might be going through this process, you know, in 2016, but I went through it in 1992, and, you know, we dealt with the same problems. I think the culture is definitely changing. Like, I think some tangible steps we've taken definitely was incorporating them into the new member education program and planning these events for them. But I think the culture, in fact, is changing dramatically, because while there are, you know, those tangible events, you know, it could, sometimes alumni see it as just like, they're only doing it because they have to. But when brothers are calling them on their free time, brothers are calling them, you know, I called a brother just the other day, he goes to Syracuse Law School, and he's like, hey, let me get out the library real quick, just to talk to me. It really, like, it changes the culture, and the culture of it really is changing. Last semester, we really didn't reach out to the alumni like that. Early in the semester, we really didn't, like, really focus that much on alumni relations, but Nationals really stressed it on us, like, it's important to keep them involved. You're in Alpha Sig for your entire life, you know, it doesn't end after graduation. And pulling them back in, just asking them for advice. The culture is definitely changing. You know, at first I thought it was just me who was doing it, and to hear that so many other brothers have been doing it recently too, it's just like, it's a cultural thing as well. And once we start setting up these events, I think they'll blow up. I think like the alumni, they can't wait to come back. They've given their advice and they want to see, you know, has it been working? Have these guys really been putting in the work that we see in the alumni page with Safe Haven and bringing in Thomas So, raising money for Honor Flight? You know, I think it's really, really improving, and I think we've taken tremendous strides in regards to improving those relations with them.
And just in addition, there was a little bit of trouble with our alumni association. In every organization, you have people who are super invested and people who are maybe a little bit more lax with their involvement. And the president of the Alumni Association, Michael Sussman, actually, he passed away from cancer. And that kind of hit a really rough patch with our relationships, because he was the one who was facilitating the alumni and we were facilitating with him. We had a ceremony and some of the alumni showed up, and I have the original Kappa paddle from like 1990, and I'm Kappa from the new generation. Michael Sussman's on my paddle in my room, and it's just something that it kind of hit home that, like, without somebody spearheading the alumni, we needed to motivate them ourselves, and that's really what we've been doing. We've been trying to pick up where Mike left off, and he had a lot of artifacts, he had a lot of different wheels moving that no one else knew about, and bringing us in with the Alumni Association is one of our next goals, to kind of reinvigorate that side of our organization.
I'm sorry,